She was worth billions, her name echoed in every corner of the city. Yet, one ordinary afternoon, she stumbled upon a scene that stopped her in her tracks. In the park, beneath worn-out clothes and a frail frame, a homeless boy sat on the cold ground, teaching her daughter how to read. No money, no privilege, just raw determination shining in his eyes. But what she did next would not only change his life, it would leave everyone speechless. For Catherine Hayes, life had always been defined by luxury. She owned penthouses that touched the clouds, private jets that crossed continents, and a reputation that kept her at the center of every social circle. Yet behind the walls of her wealth, she was also a mother, trying, in her own way, to raise her young daughter, Emily, with values that money couldn't buy. On weekends, Catherine allowed Emily to spend time in the park, believing the fresh air and freedom were worth more than any gadget. That afternoon seemed no different. The sun glowed gently over the city, families scattered across the lawns, and Catherine's security team lingered at a distance. Emily, with her small notebook clutched in hand, sat quietly beneath an oak tree. But then Catherine noticed something unusual. A boy, ragged, barefoot, no older than 11, sat beside her daughter. His clothes were tattered, his hair unkempt, yet his focus was unwavering. He wasn't begging, nor was he playing. Instead, he leaned over Emily's notebook, carefully guiding her fingers across each word as if unlocking a hidden world for her. Catherine's heart skipped. Who was this boy? Why was her daughter so entranced by him? And why, despite his broken appearance, did he seem to carry a dignity she rarely saw in the wealthiest of men? Catherine's eyes narrowed as she watched the scene unfold. For a woman who was used to control, who planned every detail of her life down to the last second, this moment felt entirely unpredictable. The homeless boy, fragile in body but strangely steady in spirit, was teaching her daughter with a patience she had rarely witnessed, even from the most expensive tutors she had hired. Emily's small fingers traced each letter, her lips moving silently before voicing the word. The boy nodded, gently correcting her, his face glowing with encouragement every time she succeeded. Catherine could almost see the spark of pride in his expression, as though Emily's progress was his own victory. Minutes passed. Catherine's heart warred between suspicion and wonder. Should she approach them? Should she call her security detail? But something inside her stopped her, an unfamiliar curiosity. For the first time in years, she was observing, not controlling. The boy's clothes told a story Catherine didn't need words to understand. The holes in his shirt, the dirt pressed into his skin, the worn soles of his feet, they painted the picture of hardship. And yet, his tone carried no bitterness. No begging. No shame. He spoke as though teaching was not a burden, but a gift he wanted to share. Finally, Catherine approached. Emily looked up with excitement. Mom! He's helping me read this poem. Look, he's so good at it. The boy froze. His shoulders stiffened, his eyes darted toward the ground. It was the reflex of someone used to rejection, someone who had been told countless times that he didn't belong. Catherine felt the sting of that silence. What's your name? She asked softly. Daniel, he whispered, barely audible. Emily jumped in before Catherine could respond. Mom, Daniel knows so much. He's been teaching me better than Mrs. Keller. She laughed innocently, but Catherine caught the unspoken truth. Her daughter, who often grew restless with high-end tutors, was completely absorbed by this boy. Catherine studied Daniel more closely. His voice carried intelligence far beyond his years, and his explanations were thoughtful, almost polished. He wasn't just repeating lessons. He was teaching with an understanding that most adults lacked. And yet here he was, sitting on the grass, his stomach likely empty, his life invisible to the city around him. Where are your parents, Daniel? She asked. His silence stretched long enough for Catherine to regret asking. Finally, he muttered, gone. Just one word. Heavy. Final. Catherine's chest tightened. She recognized the raw edge of survival in that answer. No dramatics, no explanations, just the truth of a child forced to grow up too fast. Emily reached for her notebook again, urging Daniel to continue the lesson. Catherine stood there, torn. Part of her wanted to scoop her daughter up and leave, shielding her from the boy's world of hunger and hardship. But another part, deeper, quieter, knew she was standing in the middle of something extraordinary. Here was a boy society had cast aside, invisible to the wealthy and powerful, yet carrying wisdom and resilience that no privilege could buy. And here was her daughter, a child of unimaginable fortune, looking up to him with admiration that money could never command. For Catherine Hayes, this was not just a chance encounter. It was the beginning of a test, one that would challenge not only her wealth, but her very humanity. The more Catherine observed, the more the weight of the moment pressed down on her. Daniel's ragged appearance clashed violently with the grace in his words, the discipline in his teaching, and the undeniable dignity in his tone. It was a contradiction she couldn't ignore. Suddenly, two women passing by stopped and stared. One of them muttered, loud enough to be heard, "Why is that boy sitting with her daughter? Someone should move him away." Their voices carried the familiar sting of judgment, sharp, careless, and cutting. Emily frowned, hugging her notebook closer. Daniel's head lowered immediately, as though he had heard such words 1,000 times before. Catherine felt something twist inside her chest. In that instant, she realized that this wasn't just about her daughter learning to read. This was about how the world treated a child who had nothing but knowledge to offer. The billionaire who had spent her life surrounded by power now found herself facing a choice that power could not make for her. Her instincts screamed to protect her daughter from ridicule, to silence the whispers that threatened her reputation. But her heart, something she had buried beneath years of ambition, was waking up. She stepped forward, her voice calm but unshakable. "He's not bothering anyone. In fact, he's teaching her something more valuable than money ever could." The women exchanged disbelieving looks, whispering again as they walked away. But Catherine didn't care. For the first time in years, she felt her words carry weight, not in the boardroom, not on a stage, but here, under a tree, defending a boy society had already written off. Daniel lifted his gaze, his eyes wide with a mix of shock and gratitude. No one had ever defended him before. Emily, beaming, reached for his hand and said, "See, Mom believes in you too." At that moment, Catherine knew this was more than a fleeting encounter. It was a moment that demanded action. She had the resources to change his life, to give him opportunities he could never reach alone. But more than that, she had the responsibility. The question wasn't whether she could help him. It was whether she had the courage to do something that would challenge not just her, but the world around her. Catherine stood still for a long moment, her thoughts louder than the voices around her. She had spent years building towers of glass and steel, empires of numbers and contracts, yet none of it felt as meaningful as this fragile moment beneath an oak tree. A boy with nothing was giving her daughter something priceless. And in return, he was receiving nothing but suspicion from a world too blind to see his worth. That night, Catherine couldn't sleep. Daniel's face haunted her, his steady eyes, his quiet dignity, the weight of that single word he had spoken, gone. She thought of Emily, too, how freely her daughter had trusted him, how deeply she had connected with him without caring about appearances. Children, she realized, see truth far clearer than adults clouded by pride. The next morning, Catherine returned to the park. Daniel was there again, sitting quietly, his arms wrapped around himself to fight the morning chill. When he saw her, he started to rise, ready to walk away. But she stopped him. "You don't need to run, Daniel," she said softly. "You need to be seen." From that day forward, Catherine made a decision that would ripple far beyond her own family. She arranged for Daniel to attend school, ensuring he had food, clothing, and shelter. But more than the material help, she gave him something he had been denied his entire life: dignity, opportunity, and a chance to be more than the label society had forced upon him. Emily and Daniel became inseparable. Where others saw a poor, forgotten child, Emily saw a teacher, a mentor, and a friend. Catherine often watched them together, realizing that in lifting Daniel, she had given her daughter the greatest lesson of all: compassion. News of her actions spread quickly. Some praised her. Others criticized her for involving a homeless boy with her family. But Catherine didn't care. She had learned a truth money could never buy, that greatness is not measured by wealth, but by the courage to lift someone when the world expects you to turn away. And as she looked at Daniel, now walking with confidence, she couldn't help but wonder. How many more children like him are out there, brilliant, capable, but unseen? And how long will we keep ignoring them?